I'm going to walk through this Lenovo Legion T5 tower the way most of us approach a big-ticket PC, with a little skepticism, a lot of research, and a focus on what it actually does for you day to day. If you're still on the fence about whether a pre-built like this is worth the money, stay tuned. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, the biggest hesitation most buyers have is the what am I really getting for this price? The headline specs an AMD Ryzen 9 7950X3D and a GeForce RTX 5070 sound like a dream machine, but the real question is how those components translate into a smooth gaming experience, content creation workflow, and even just sitting at a desk for a few hours of work. The Legion T5 is marketed as a high-end gaming desktop, yet you're also paying for the convenience of a fully assembled system, a tidy chassis, and Lenovo's support infrastructure. That convenience can be a huge value add if you don't want to tinker with cable management or BIOS settings, but it also means you're locked into whatever Lenovo chose for cooling and power delivery. Let's start with the CPU. The Ryzen 9 7950X3D is a 16-core, 32-thread powerhouse that leans heavily on AMD's 3D V-cache technology. In real-world terms, that extra cache shows up most noticeably when you're juggling multiple demanding applications, say, streaming a 4K game on Twitch while running Photoshop and a video encoder in the background. I've seen users report that the 7950X3D can keep frame rates stable even when the CPU is under heavy load, because the cache reduces the need to fetch data from RAM as often. For most gamers, the difference between a 7950X and a 7950X3D might be a few frames per second, but for creators who need consistent performance across CPU-heavy tasks, that extra cache can be the deciding factor. Now the GPU, the RTX 5070 with 16GB of VRAM is a step up from the previous generation's 4070. In practice, the extra VRAM gives you a bit more breathing room at 1440p and even 4K, especially with texture-heavy titles like Cyberpunk 2077 or Microsoft Flight Simulator. What I've heard from owners is that the 5070 handles ray tracing at 1440p with DLSS 3 quite comfortably, maintaining 60+ FPS without the stutter you sometimes see on lower-tier cards. If you plan to game at 1080p, you'll be overkill. But if you want a future-proof rig that can handle the next wave of graphically intensive games without a major upgrade, the GPU is a solid part of the equation. Storage and memory are where the Legion T5 shines in everyday usability. A 2TB NVMe SSD means you can install several large games, think Red Dead Redemption 2, Elden Ring, and the full suite of Adobe Creative Cloud apps without ever worrying about hitting a wall. Load times are snappy. The OS boots in under 10 seconds, and swapping between applications feels fluid. The 32GB of DDR5 RAM is more than enough for gaming, streaming, and multitasking. In practice, you'll rarely see RAM usage go beyond 12GB unless you're running a virtual machine or a heavy rendering job, so the extra capacity mostly acts as future-proofing. One area where the Legion T5 shows a hidden trade-off is cooling. Lenovo packs the system with a proprietary dual-fan setup that's quieter than many custom builds at idle, but under sustained load, say, a marathon gaming session or a long video render, the fans will ramp up noticeably. The chassis is a mid-tower with a fairly tight interior layout, which keeps the footprint small but can make airflow a bit more constrained compared to an open-frame build. Users have reported that temperatures hover in the low 70°C for the CPU during heavy workloads, which is acceptable, but not as low as you'd see with a larger, custom water-cooled loop. If you're sensitive to fan noise or plan to overclock, that's something to keep in mind. Power consumption is another practical point. The 7950X3D and 5070 together can draw close to 500 W under full load, so the included 750W PSU gives you headroom, but it's not a massive surplus. The unit will run a respectable bill of materials, but you won't have much wiggle room for adding another high-end GPU down the line without upgrading the power supply. For most buyers who intend to stick with one GPU, the stock PSU is fine, but if you envision a dual GPU setup for AI work or heavy compute, you'll need to factor in an upgrade. So, who should buy this machine? If you're a serious gamer who wants a single-handed solution that can handle 1440p with ray tracing now and still be ready for 4K in a couple of years, the Legion T5 checks that box. It's also a great fit for streamers who need a reliable CPU for encoding while the GPU powers the game, and for creators who want a fast SSD and plenty of RAM without having to source each component. The pre-built nature removes the guesswork of BIOS updates, cable routing, and driver installations, which can be a big relief if you're not comfortable building your own PC. On the flip side, if you're a